we're on Love That Data Flow. I'm going to look at my agenda. I'm going to pull the agenda over here. We've got this this awesome group of people here that are each going to take about 6 or 7 minutes to talk about how they're using EdFi to do data integrations, or how they're. So I've kind of got this idea. We've kind of got it lined up. We've got Marybeth Windham from Baker, Lanier Clyatt from Union, and Scott Weinman from the Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind. And I like to think of it almost as like a past, present, and future, but sort of a spin on that with use cases. So we've got a use case in Baker County that's been proven out, gone through a survey period. We have in Union County a current use case that is currently under works, dealing with some assessments. And then at the Florida School for the Deaf and Blind with Scott, we'll be talking about some really cool ideas that he has swimming around in his head about doing on top of EdFi. Again, everything is, it's a collaborative, and it's a group of districts, and we're using the EdFi data standard, and we're just wanting to share how we're doing that as far as integrations go. So let's go to the next slide. We're talking about integrations. Hopefully today you're going to get a couple of aha moments. You'll have, after each person talks, you'll have a few minutes to ask them questions, and then we'll hop to the next person. Ultimately, if we get to the very end of the session, it's only 45 minutes. If we get to the very end of this session, and you haven't had a chance to answer a question or ask a question, I'm sorry, we'll have that 11 o'clock Ask Me Anything panel that you can ask some questions as well. I'm hoping instead of integrations, instead of you being like an face by the end of this, that these ideas will flip that frown upside down and turn it into a smile. It's for years, right? We've all been dealing with how do we get data from one system to another. We have assessment systems. We have multiple assessment systems. We have student information systems. We have business systems, special ed systems. The state wants data, right? And how can we use the data standard to kind of move these data points around and get them interacting with each system? So I want to kick off our first presenter here, Marybeth Windham, and I'll let you kind of tell more about yourself. I remember the first time I met Marybeth about 5 years ago or so. Came over to Baker and got introduced to you, and I've enjoyed working with you ever since. So Marybeth, I'll let you take it away, kind of talk a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Good morning, everyone. I am the student database manager in Baker County, and I've been here for 13 years. And before that, I was in Hamilton County for 20 years, working there. So 33 years total. And we have just started using virtual code in the last probably year and a half, 2 years. And if Sherod will go to the next slide, I'm going to show you an example of what we are doing with our Florida code. That's our website. Okay, we use Skyward. I'm not sure if everybody on here uses Skyward, if everybody uses different data systems, but this is the field, the utility that we have set up, that we load our staff fields from API using EdFi. And if you'll notice, sort of at the bottom of the screen where it says options, how to set fields, some things we load using EdFi, and some things we just let it, based on what data we already have in there, we leave alone. But if you'll notice that the Florida Ed Identifier, the FLCODE, the certificate number, and the local staff ID, we load those from our HR side into our student side if it's blank. If we have already gone in there and somebody has put something in there, we don't override, but we could to make sure that the correct data is coming over there. But we do, our local data processors don't have access to that field. So we have it automatically load from the HR side into the student side. And it is wonderful because it makes sure you get the the FLE ID, the certificate, and the local staff number correctly instead of having a typo if you're keying it by hand or somebody mismatching the data. And if you see down there under what to print, it prints the Ed5 staff with an invalid match from Skyward. So if there is something that is mismatching out of Skyward, it will also print a report that shows the mismatch. You can see we don't do a lot of things based on there. There are other things we don't keep up with the survey job code inside of the student side, and we don't use the title like Mr. or Mrs. or anything like that. But the things that are needed for the surveys, we get it directly from the HR. And if it's wrong in HR, of course, then it's going to be wrong in Skyward Student. But we have found that we do not have any problems setting that information to upload for us. And it's been a wonderful help for me because I'm the person that usually goes, because the two databases aren't connected, I go look them up and type them in. And it saves me from making typos. And also, if you'll look up in the template settings, there's a red line that says it's used as a scheduled or monitored task. So that if I change something on there, then it's going to change that task. So the first thing I did was run it as a regular utility. And then after we found that it was working, we just set it up as a task, and it runs, I think, nightly at the end of every day and updates anybody that they have updated from the HR side to the student side. So I never have to look at it. And that's wonderful. Now we'll have to create a new task when at the end of the year, when this year is over with, because it's just set for the school year 2020-2021. But I should only have to look at this task once a year. And if there's anything that is changed on the HR, it will change on this side. If a certificate is put in, because a lot of times when they put the teachers in the HR side, we may not have the certificate number yet. But after they get that in, this will run and it will automatically populate, and it's a wonderful utility. So I know it can be used for lots of other things, but so far this is the main thing that has been helpful on my side to get this working, and then it creates no problems in my surveys. Everybody goes over there with data.
And you guys, so what survey just finished up?
3.
Survey 3. And what part of the survey does this help with? What specific?
The teacher course.
Okay.
It puts the FLE ID for the teacher. This is just teacher data that it populates. The FLE ID for the teacher, which, like I say, is not on the student side, so I don't normally have. So it takes it from the HR side and puts it in the student side. The teacher's certificate takes it from the HR side, puts it in the student side, and the local staff ID, which we use out of Skyward on the HR side, and it too puts it in the student side. It's wonderful. So you don't get all those 5F errors that you normally get on the survey from teachers missing data or mismatching from the HR to the student side.
It sounds like it's been kind of nice because it's like really the source of truth for these 3 data points that you're using, or at least 2 of them, the staff FLE ID, the local staff ID. Really the source of truth is what? The HR system, right? Yes,
they all 3 are generated to HR. And before I was having to do these manually, and they'd be like, I'd run a extract report and there'd be an error because they had added them to the HR side, and I didn't even know this person was on the HR side. So then I'd go put them in on the student side. So it's been wonderful.
And so in the past, before using this, the typical error might be, I flubbed the key or whatever. I got to go back in, make a change, fix something that I did in the student database. But in this case, it's really kind of putting the weight back on the HR system, right? Making sure the HR system has it.
And sometimes, let's say when we enter them on the staff side of the student side, they may not have gotten the certificate yet. They may have been hired, but they have not gotten their certificate number yet in the HR side. So then instead of me having to remember to go back and check that or get the error report from the student side and then go in and check it, this does it for me. So it's very automated, very helpful.
Yeah. I love hearing that. This is kind of like one of those proven out use cases. You guys have done it. You've been through a survey period with it. You know, I love that it is something you can kind of set, forget. Of course, you'll, you know, if you get edits and stuff back from the state, you'll be able to go back and trace those down. But it's, I'm glad it's helping you guys.
And we've been through, we used it for survey 2 also. So we've been through the whole year of using it.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, thank you, Marybeth. Thank you for sharing what you guys are doing. Yeah, thank you guys for sharing what you're doing. So let's transition now. I actually have a guest with me here in my office with me, and I forgot to put his position title. I'm so sorry, Lanier. This is Lanier Cly. What is your position?
That one looks pretty good. I like that one. I'm an MIS director. I've been in MIS probably 25 years, I guess. Education total about 40 years. So I attended several of the Florida Code sessions over time, and I saw a lot of potential for the standardizations, but didn't really see anything for our district that I thought would help us out. But about 18 months ago or something, we started looking. We had a company that we had been with since about 2014 that we used for progress monitoring. Every night through NEFAC from Skyward, we had extracts that pushed up to them, demographics, attendance, ESE codes, grades, test scores, whatever. So we could have all that stuff side by side in the system, and it also gave us the opportunity for progress monitoring because they had test item banks there. So needless to say, it worked very well for us, but it also came with a premium price. And so maybe like kind of more recently, fast forward, notice that textbook companies begin to ramp up digital content and supply item banks as part of their test textbooks stuff and for progress monitoring. And it became kind of apparent that we could reverse the process and let our data stay at NEFAC, which made me feel better. But then also we could bring in this data from all these progress monitoring sources, and through the use of Power BI, we could get that in there. So Power BI gave us a lot more control over how we wanted reports and views to look, and Sherod and Shane's team pretty much stated if we can get a properly formatted text file to them, they could get it into Power BI. Well, that's the way I took it. Now, they probably have to jump through some hoops, but that's the way I took it. So this is really going to start being more of a cost savings to us. And since the digital content providers provide their own item banks, we can just bring that in. Right now, we're working on bringing this stuff from Savvis, iReady, and USA Test Prep, just for examples. The other cool thing about this, if we decide to move to a different platform, our data stays with us. We don't lose all that stuff we had out there. And I like that. Also thought about, hadn't mentioned this to Sherod, but if we take our eye observation data from our walkthroughs from the administrators and kind of stick that out there next to that, so then we get the eye observation data, what the administrators saw, we get our progress monitoring data there, and we stick the state data out there, and we see, is all of this stuff lining up? If what we're seeing as a administrator, are we marking it this way, but the results in the state test show something else? So it's kind of a continuous loop model of feedback of, you know, are we doing, is everything looking like we think it should be? And so I'm not a curriculum person, definitely, so there's that. But I've even thought about, at some point in time, to me, getting down to the standard level by teacher. So you look at standards over time by teacher, you know, on a 3 or 4 year trend thing. And if I'm always weak in algebraic reasoning or whatever it is now, awareness, then that's where you need to pinpoint me for PD. I don't need the whole gamut. I just need that one thing. And Sherod's teaching the same course, then we look at Sherod's data, and if his data is good for that standard, it's like then we pair up, and then I watch Sherod how he unwraps that standard. So we think it's a good thing. Like I said, it's still under development, and we got tickets going back and forth all the time, but it's really good. Appreciate all that Sherod and Shane's team are doing to help us with this, and I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really cool to see, because like these assessments you mentioned, Savvis, you mentioned USA Test Prep, but then there's also assessments that really live in the student information system too. Right. And you guys use Skyward.
Yep.
In the past, it's always been like, I have this data living in different places. You mentioned you guys used the company to kind of collect all that data in one spot, but it came at a premium. What's kind of nice about using EdFi is you kind of get to collect all that data in one spot, and as you said, it's in one place.
Right.
And it's your data. You're not. So let's say, let's say you bring in another test company you haven't mentioned. You bring that data in. You still own that data. It's there, and you can do with it whatever you want. You can help get it to other systems. You mentioned Power BI, doing some reports off the top of that. So it's been there are assessment vendors and things out there that actually have adopted the EdFi standard. iReady is one of those. Mastery Connect is another platform. If you go to the website of let me take you guys. We have a second here. Let me pull this up. I just kind of want to tie this in a little bit, kind of do a little impromptu. If you go to EdFi, I think it's certifications actually. This is totally like just off the cuff here. So EdFi certifications, registry of certified products. You see some SIS vendors that are certified. So you can see all the SIS vendors that are certified as you go through. Skyward and Focus, being two huge SIS vendors here. But we have some assessment vendors that the actual EdFi standard, the integration part is built in with the assessment vendor. So we've got RightScore, ACT, Homeroom by Randa, Illuminate Education, Mastery Connect, SchoolNet by Pearson, EduWave. So these systems, if your district used them and you have an EdFi environment, you can kind of just plug in the bit of security info and just kind of start letting data flow. The challenge is with some of the things we've been working with you guys, Savvis. I think Savvis used to be owned by Pearson.
Pearson, yeah.
USA Test Prep, a few others, is there's a bit more manual work to kind of do some mapping or whatever to make it mapped. EdFi has this tool called data import. And I'm going to, again, this is kind of spur of the moment here. But data import is a tool that you can take your CSV files, and there's mappings that have already been produced out there, tons of mappings around the assessment domain specifically, where you can just use that. You can set up a SFTP folder. It's something we're working on doing with you guys with Savvis.
Right.
Exporting it straight out of Savvis, putting it in the SFTP folder, and importing it right into EdFi. So I'm gonna just log in. I don't know why it didn't hit me before to have like a screenshot of this. Probably because I was planning a summit. So this is data import. It's a tool I mentioned earlier. We have a training out there if you want to see more about data import. If you go to the FLCODE YouTube site, we have just a couple of trainings there right now, but this is one of them. There's a template sharing feature here. And, you know, we're using this to all of these assessments, all these formative, all these kind of random type assessments, right, that are out there. You know, we got Dibbles, Catapult Learning, Curriculum Associates iReady's there. You can see that's some work that we did. But we'll keep going to the next page. All the College Board assessments, SAT, your advanced placement assessments, NWEA, iStation, Airways, New Mexico, FastBridge, STAR, WIDA. You know, you just achieve 3,000. You know, the list kind of is pretty extensive, and is continuing to build. And so, again, kind of the thing that Union and Lanier are kind of working on this year has been like, let's start doing some work, all these kind of various assessments that we have, and let's work to kind of collect them in one spot. The great thing is as they're doing this work, it's shareable, right? So it's shareable to the collaborative. If everyone's using the common data standard or common way of doing things, all the work that gets done with Union is shareable back. And that's why you see all these things here, you know, and even New Mexico. Not that we probably use a New Mexico assessment here, but they're doing that they've got it mapped to the EdFi data standard. So, you know, anyways, so thank you, Lanier.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
I had to, you know, Lanier was very gracious to be here today. So I'm really thankful that you joined us. All right. And one other thing I forgot to mention is we have Taylor here with us. Taylor is our subject matter expert at FLCODE, and he's just kind of monitoring the chat. I'm assuming the chat is working. I guess I don't know if any of you have tried the chat. If you have a question you want to put in for us, if the chat's not working, somebody let me know, turn the mic off and just say, hey, I have a question, the chat's not working. But
I don't see the chat available.
You don't see it available? Okay. Well, let's take a moment. Does anybody have any questions for either Marybeth or Lanier? And I see where Taylor has put in the chat, but I wonder if that's maybe, can anyone else see where Taylor put, can you see this? I'm just going to put, hey. Okay. I wonder if it's some sort of meeting.
I still don't see it.
Yeah. Okay. I apologize for that. Well, I believe everybody can unmute themselves. So if you do have a question, feel free to just go ahead and ask away. All right. Let's go ahead and go to our next presenter, Scott. We have Scott Weinman from the Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind. We had Marybeth talk about proven use case. We had Lanier talk about a use case currently under work. And we have Scott just getting introduced to EdFi this year. I met Scott, yeah, I don't know, I guess this year, right? Really formally. And we've been doing some work together, and he has some ideas in his head, some possibilities on top of EdFi. So go ahead, Scott.
Well, thank you, Sherod. I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to everybody today. Hopefully I'm off of mute so you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. You're a little bit quiet.
A little too quiet?
Just a hair quiet. Oh, I don't hear you at all now. Oh, I hear you.
Better? Hopefully
yeah,
you can hear me now.
Good.
Yes. Okay.
I think you're good.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, and I really appreciate everything Sherod has done in getting us set up with where we are in our project. So it's very exciting, the ideas that come up. So I appreciate that you're here to join me for kind of designing a vision. We all have a common need, and that's to serve our students. But there's so much data and it needs to go so many places to do that. And as I was designing my slide and mapping out where it goes, I was really amazed at just what that looks like. What does that data story look like? So we use Skyward. That's kind of our data source. So that's where it begins. And Sherod was able to write a PHP script that uses the EdFi API to send the data into SQL Server, which is the ODS, the operational data store. So it gets sent there. In most cases, it's near real time. But in some demographic cases, it's just every 5 minutes. But that was a major improvement because what we did before was we just had CSV files in an SFTP share that updated once an hour. So we went from once an hour to near real time, or the slowest at every 5 minutes. So that's where we are at the moment. What we do with our current student data is we load it into our tables, and then it gets sent to other software. So we use a product called OneSync. It's from Clyatt, and it takes the data from that view in SQL Server, or in our case in Oracle, since we're migrating, and it provisions Active Directory user accounts automatically. So it's on a schedule. We've set it for about 4 times in the morning to just kind of check and see if there's new data. And so it grabs it from the view, and it sends it to Google for Google Docs in Google Drive, but it sends it back to Directory. And then in Active Directory, it'll send that to Azure AD. And Azure AD will then provision everybody's Office software and iCloud. So basically, you'll get your ID already in our security on-prem system. And then you get your computer faster is kind of the end result, or at least your account. So if you're a student who's not even on campus and you've been kind of signed, sealed, delivered, welcome to the company in Skyward, then that data gets instantly transferred on the schedule and through these systems automatically, so that before you know it, you have your account, you're ready to sign in, you can start doing work just about as quickly as we could imagine doing it. And that's our current idea and use case for the EdFi standard. It's one component in that chain of events that really impacts student activities. So right now we're doing it based off the CSV files that we get, but all those other components in the train are functioning right now. This is how it works. And then also data gets sent over to our food service software. So our vendor for that is Mosaic. It used to be NutriKids. I don't know if anybody uses them. So the idea is you have a meal pin inside of Skyward, and through this chain of events, it gets sent to Mosaic, our food service. So a student walks up and is ready for their free lunch, and they tell the employee their code, and our food service worker types it in, and their picture shows up, and their data shows up, all before they get breakfast. And since we're a boarding school, they get breakfast, lunch, and can get a dinner. So it's really amazing to plug in EdFi into this and to see how quickly our data can move, so that we're more efficient and effective and more secure at the end of the day. We don't have little Active Directory accounts for people who aren't here anymore, or for students who might have changed schools. They get deactivated just about as quickly as they get activated. So that's been exciting for us to just map out where this data goes, how it works, and what can we dream up to use it. Because now that you've got data moving quickly, another software we built is a custom software solution for our healthcare center. So if, for example, if there's a peanut allergy put in Skyward, well, there's people who need to know that right away. And the EdFi API lets that data travel really quickly to our tables and then triggers to send it to the nurses and to the food service personnel, so that we really protect the students' health. So those are just some kind of visions that we are currently doing and that we're integrating the EdFi standard into. Hopefully you guys will get to dream and imagine what you can do with data once it travels just so quickly through this API. And I'd love to hear your ideas, because at the end of the day, you and I, we're all serving the students. We're solving the same problems. So I'm sure you guys have wonderful ideas for how you can solve your problem. And I imagine there'll be solutions that I need that I don't even know exist, because you thought about them and you designed them. So if we can get together after this, and I'm sure Sherod could let my contact info be available to you. I'd love to work together with you, show you what we're doing, how we're doing it. Maybe we can help you do what you do better or faster, or help in some way that benefits you. And so that'd be great. I'd love to work with you guys. So that's pretty much what we do. And I know I've covered a lot of data points.
Yeah.
Do you guys have questions or ideas?
Yeah, I'll wait a second to see if anyone has any specific questions.
Sure.
Don't be shy. You don't have to show yourself on the screen. We just need to hear your voice. Sorry, the chat is not an option. Wish we had the chat working. While maybe some of you are thinking of questions, I kind of, a couple of the things that you mentioned, Scott, kind of wanted to highlight. You mentioned Skyward as your kind of main source system, which is your student information system, correct? That you guys use. And you use, what do you guys use for staff?
So we're a state agency as well as a school. So our staff data is with the Department of Managed Services as opposed to the Department of Education. Mm-hmm. So we get our staff data through People First. And so we have an Oracle database link. So we reach out to them and grab data in the morning after they process it for their data warehouse. And then that feeds our production tables that then pushes data to the different core services that we use. Honeywell for ID creation, Mosaic for food, and we push data to Skyward as well in a small way through these SFTP connections. So we kind of connect staff and student through our internal database, currently Oracle, and moving to SQL Server to then really feed data where it needs to go and to capture some data that's not in People First and not in Skyward. Teacher certificates, the teacher continuing education. So we have a person who tracks that for our teachers so that they maintain their teaching certifications. That data has to be captured for surveys, which everyone would call probably familiar with. So that's all of that data gets grabbed from the different sources and then pushed out where it needs to go.
And what kind of triggers in my mind, you and I were talking about visions for the future and things. The cool thing is that, you're talking about you're having to go from Oracle, you're trying to switch to SQL Server. The great thing about EdFi is their operational data store, their database. You heard Marybeth talking earlier about some staff data. EdFi, the EdFi data standard covers a wide range of data elements and domains. So it covers staff, it even covers finance, it covers student, we mentioned with Lanier, with assessments. It covers all special ed, the things in the SIS. So when we talk about integrating systems to systems, we really are talking about the ability to get all data points from all systems to other systems. So, you mentioned one of the things was kind of a real IT type thing. You mentioned Active Directory. And I don't know if anybody that's joining us with us right now is more kind of more on the IT side of things, always concerned about security, right? Making sure that the person that only has security at the moment they have security, right? And then how that affects with the source system, right? Because if you go to the source, you're talking about maybe taking your ClassLink product that helps you provision Active Directory. And really what you need is near real-time data. And what you also need is you really don't want to maintain that student data in several places, right? You really would just like to maintain that student data in the student system. And that's what I love about with EdFi is it really puts the weight of maintaining accurate data on the source system. And so you've got, let's say someone like Marybeth or Lanier, right? They're managing at FSDB. You've got your people there that manage the data in Skyward. You've got a data clerk, right, that puts it in. The great thing is they don't have to worry about getting an extract to you. through some SFTP thing. There's already this API connection that's getting data from Skyward into the ODS. And if you point your ClassLink product to the SQL database there, everything's kind of flowing and jiving. The other thing that's kind of neat about the, what you mentioned there is, let's say another system you wanted to integrate in came along, you wouldn't necessarily have to learn that system's tables, that system's, all of its nuances. It just uses, that system uses the EdFi standard. It gets data into your SQL database, the operational data store. You're already familiar with that. It's not like you're learning a new set of tables and fields. You're already integrating with things you've already built views for and that type of thing. One other thing that you kind of mentioned that kind of, again, we're visionaries. We've got a couple of minutes here, giving people a chance to think of questions. If you're moving from one system, this Oracle-based system, you're going to have to build a brand new database from scratch. One that accounts for, beta, right? Beta version, brand new, not even version 1 yet. One that accounts for all the appropriate student fields, staff fields, right? Well, the great thing is that you've got these massive brain teams with EdFi that have built a database already for you. It has foreign keys, primary keys. It has an API that goes along with it so that you can send data into an API. You could also, it's just a SQL database at the end of the day. You could do your own ETL into that. I mentioned in the general session, there is the work of the pioneer. And that's valid work. And oftentimes I find that I am a pioneer myself. But there's a lot of downside to that because, again, it's a lot of beta. It's a lot of trying it out. It's a lot, we use the term sometimes bleeding edge. And not just cutting edge, but, I'm bleeding. The great thing about, EdFi is it's proven out. I hope everyone was at the general session. Hopefully you saw that map that was presented by Troy, the EdFi's president. The states that were blue are states that have adopted the EdFi data standard. So you've got the Department of Educations. And I'm going to highlight this for a second. Department of Educations that have implemented EdFi and do data collection with EdFi. In production for years now. I don't mean like maybe this will happen for years in production, states are collecting data through EdFi. I'm kind of transitioning away. Scott, I really appreciate the visions that you had. And awesome, man. Thank you. And thank you, Marybeth. Thank you, Lanier. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. I want to leave people, we're talking about integrating data and getting from system to system. We have a couple of SIS vendors here in the state that are working with EdFi. We have several. There was a list I showed you of certified vendors. You saw the SIS vendors that are there. How powerful would it be for our own state to adopt the EdFi data standard and use it in data collection? There's a push right now to collect discipline data on a monthly basis. How are we going to, and that's not part of the official surveys, right? So it's another data collection. EdFi covers the discipline domain. How powerful would it be that it didn't matter what SIS vendor we used if the Department of Ed here in Florida adopted the EdFi standard? We go into our systems, we plug in it's called an endpoint, basically pointing where it should go, provide in the key and secret. And that API controls it, and it does exactly, it limits things. You're in your systems, how like you only want certain users to do certain things. I want you to read. I don't want you to delete. I just want you to update, right? So there's all that baked in, all that security baked into the EdFi API. There's a database there, a SQL-based database. It's a modern database, enterprise ready. How powerful would it be for us to be able to transmit data at near real time to the Department of Education, using a common standard that SIS vendors and other vendors that you saw are already acquainted with, they're already familiar with, they're already integrating with. Using data standards for integration is so powerful. And all it takes is for us as a collaborative, whether you're part of official member of FLCODE or not, let's join together as a state. We've got 40 districts that have registered to be a part of this summit today. Let's all catch the vision of what it means to use a common data standard, using a modern way of transmitting data through an API. APIs are all around us every day, whether you know it or not. You're dealing with APIs. Just hit Amazon, just hit Walmart, and a modern database. And let's think about the other states again that are using EdFi. They've proven those use cases out. They've been successful. They've successfully given money to their districts based off of that data they collect. So I'm trying to help. We're ending with Scott kind of a visual, a future kind of ideas of what he wants to do with EdFi at Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind. But let's take it to a state level. What can we do with EdFi as far as integration goes? Shane and Jake are talking about what can we do with visualizations. Sean, he's talking about what is EdFi, but here we're talking about integrating data, getting data from system to system. What can we do as a state to improve our data collection processes? It's very possible that could be done with EdFi. So reach out to your state reps. Ask them, say, hey, have you heard of EdFi? We've heard of EdFi. We went to a FLCODE summit. We're interested in EdFi. Some of you I know are member districts. Reach out to your state rep at DOE and say, listen, we're doing EdFi. We want to send you data through EdFi. It's very easy on us. It'll be very easy on you. I mean, obviously there's, integration, there's stand-up things, but you know what? There are organizations ready and available to help you with that. I believe there's one I see Jean-Francois. He's in the chat right now. He's with a company called Edwire. They have pre-negotiated pricing that if you need help with like standing up EdFi, that kind of thing. If you need help with the standards, you can reach out to him. But you may be a district, you can totally do it on your own. There are districts doing it on their own. Listen, let's join together. Let's collaborate. Send emails. Just because you send an email doesn't mean it's like some sort of commitment to join the collaborative. It doesn't mean you're like, oh, I'm doing EdFi now. It just let's spark this conversation. That's why we're here today. Let's do data. Let's do it better. Let's do it in a modern way. I like to think about the old cart in the West, the old covered wagon, and they're pulling the goods across the country. Anybody ever played what was that? I played some Pioneer game as a kid in elementary school. The Oregon Trail, right? How many people died on the Oregon Trail? Most. So, and then you think about like Star Trek. I don't know if there's any Trekkie fans out there. Beam me up, Scotty, right? Much faster and much quicker way of getting a person from one place to another. We don't have to do it the old way anymore. There is a modern way of getting data moved around, and doing it in a standard way makes sense.